Hey everybody, welcome back. Well, the ES had a bad day, obviously. We came down. We're going to talk about after hours and what's going on because we're seeing a shift already. But we do need to talk about this and the fact that you are kind of having a bad day here. Now, if we just go and take this 22 that's sitting there, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take this one right here that's a 90, and we're going to make this a 12. If you don't know, I use a 12, a 22, and a 55, open, high, low, close. You should use what you're comfortable with. We're just going to leave that purple for a minute, but that's probably going to freak everybody out because they are used to orange for that. So let's just make it orange and go from there. At this time, I'm setting everything up to black because black, the dark background, was more of a request. And here is the watermark. We have a lot to go over, especially with what crowd's doing after hours, being up over 22%, and what it's doing to software after it sold down today. So the game never ends, right? But what are we seeing with ES? You're sitting right on that 12, 22 level. We've seen these tests over and over and over again, right? And we just keep grinding higher. We're not going to go straight up, guys. It doesn't work that way. And one of the key things that I keep trying to point out is when we look at these kinds of moves, we just have to understand that. So we got a little extended. We got a little ahead of ourselves and we came back. I won't show the same charts I showed yesterday because it's a waste of time. But remember all the Bollinger Bands that we went over and how they were overlaid and where some of these names were on third standard deviation moves and what that means. So what we're going to see here is we're just going to see some sideways action and maybe a little bit of a correction. I don't know that we're going to see much more than that, but I think it's important for us to note that if we take a look at the NQ, and let's remove this level, what we're going to see is we're going to see a pretty neat move down, right? I mean, that's a pretty sizable move. It was over 2% today. And if we zoom in here, you did close under the 12 and you are sitting right on the 22. And that is a decent amount of volume that came in. Now, we've had these times before where it's happened and we've seen them ever since January. You just come down and test and test and test. It's not the end of the world. It really is not that we're just coming in. We may have gotten a little over our skis here. And based upon that, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. So I'm not going to give a lot of hyperbole tonight. I try not to do that. I just try to tell you what I think is going on. And I appreciate your comments and I respond to them as much as I possibly can. I try to respond to everybody. What I will say is every single time that we've had a double-digit drop, and there's only been a couple of them in the past year. You've only had a couple. We've had here, and then there was another one back here. You have the same result that you had here and the same result you had here. You went sideways for a couple months, and then you broke out and you hit a new high. Now, you have retail involved, and retail has no idea what they're doing. So as always, retail could just come rushing in. I do think it's interesting that Bitcoin hit this level and stopped. I also think it's important to note the last time that Bitcoin was this high was back here. And we all know what happened back here, that MicroStrategies went out and did the same thing they're doing now, which was raise a secondary, right? Same exact kind of situation. I mean, same superheated. It's not too hard to see. But why does this matter? Well, because Bitcoin really, it's ahead, in my opinion, it's way ahead of itself on a chart from any technical standpoint. And I think most people that understand technical analysis would agree with that, but it doesn't mean that it can't go higher. I just think a rest and then going sideways for a little bit, some consolidation is not the worst thing in the world. If we look at MicroStrategies, I would imagine that this actually goes down to sideways until they do that secondary. I mean, it was a pretty easy short last night after hours after they came out and said they were going to do a secondary. The thing is you just had to have the guts to hold it overnight because you don't know if you're going to open up 100 or down 100. And that's really not the best way to play something. But the point of all this is you were getting into a tough penny environment. You had a tough penny environment yesterday, and you had a tough penny environment today. What does that mean? It means you want to cycle through your trades. It means that most of your trades are going to be wash, rinse, repeat. In other words, what you're going to do is you're going to find ideas, you're going to put those ideas on, and then you're going to pull money out of them. Now, most people will say, don't do that. Just hold them. They're going to come back. If you do any kind of trading and you don't have a process to it, you're going to have a problem. So you always want to have a process, right? And from my knowledge and what I've learned over 20 years is just understand the environment that you're in. So the environment you're in right now is what I would consider a tough penny environment. You don't know if you're going to gap up. You don't know if you're going to gap down. So what I find most helpful is to take what you can get during the day and then just get out of the way. And until this settles down and figures out what it wants to be, when it grows up. But so you take something like SMCI, for example. Now, it's just going to be easier for me to show it this way, just so you can understand where my head is. This is a trade from March 4th, we paid $3.15 for crowd. And then we actually got out before this, candidly. If I'm not up 10%, I'll just buy it after hours usually. I'll play with it after hours if I don't have a 10% cushion. But we actually did okay on the trade. This was just something else that we did. And this was a swing trade we've been in for a while. And then we got in at 900 and then it hit 1,000 yesterday and we just trimmed it. But focus on this for a second, 2 o'clock. And what you'll see is I just put an alert out, do a little day trade. And really what we do is we just see a pattern. And we see exactly flipping a really key level. And we know it's going to push right into that opening price. I'll show you it in a minute. And then as soon as you push into that opening price, we just pull something out, basically 1 times R, ripping something out. And then we trimmed again when it flipped and then couldn't hold. And then more conservative accounts could use break even instead of the 1027 low. And then when it went up 10, we pulled more money out. And then when it went to 1060, I got out of the way at the end of the day because I didn't mean to make that rhyme because I didn't want to take the risk. Now, there's a couple different things that people are going to say here. Oh, you should have held. Well, hindsight's a beautiful thing. And when you look at a chart after you're done with the chart, life gets really easy, doesn't it? But if you're going into the end of the day and then you see something like this where you pop over and you see that amount of red and then right behind it you see this light green, you don't have the luxury of the rest of this. So you have a decision to make. Do I want to take a $30 profit or do I want it to go away? It's a no-brainer for me in this environment. I lock it in. But what you're doing, and this is what I did today, it's the same thing I did yesterday. I am constantly wash, rinsing, repeat in this market, hitting a single, locking it in, going, finding the next setup, hitting a single, locking it in. Because you don't know if you're going to get this or you don't know if you're going to get this. Okay? You don't know what you're going to get. For example, if someone was trying to do that with Microsoft today, they had a really bad day. If they're like, oh no, just hold the breakout, right? So you don't know what you're going to get. So the important thing is for you to differentiate between, am I in a trending market or am I in a market that's a tough penny environment? I find that people from these videos and your comments are learning best through a P&L. So take a look at this P&L and look at these 2 different days and you should be able to pick up where I'm going with this. One of the things that we need to talk about is just trading styles and when to know what type of environment you're in. There's no easier way for me to show this as P&L. People seem to be getting this a lot by me showing a P&L. So this is where we're at for the year. This is one trading account. It started, for those that are newer and watching this, it started with roughly, it looks like a little under 200 when I started it. So we should be up over 100% right now. It's an aggressive account, day trading, swing trading. There's options in here. But you're up to 40, 295 trade expectancy. Every time you touch the computer, you make 295, profit 2.36, win rate 54%. That is a good win rate, 1.95. All right. People think this has to be higher. It doesn't. There are different trading styles and there's different modalities. And what I mean by that is you have to understand the environment you're in. I explained a little earlier in yesterday's video what type of environment you're in, right? And what I want to do is this is Jan. Okay, so we know that Jan was like a runaway market, right? And you're just pulling money out left and right, left and right. And then you start getting into February. And February was like that too in the beginning. And then we start going sideways and then you'll start seeing more smaller hits, right? And then we just kind of had that VKTX that was in here. And then we were positioned for that. But of course, then we had what happened on Monday where we hit, or Friday rather, where we hit very well on, I believe it was Dell on some options, and then takes you into Monday. Now, what's transpired between Friday and Monday and today? You should be able to see it, and you should be able to see the markets change. I can show you Tuesday. It doesn't matter because we're trading crowd after hours right now. So I'll probably go through Tuesday tomorrow. But what I want to go through is this. You're going from these big moves to where you're starting to have to hit singles. You'll notice it yesterday. So if I take a look at today's action, meaning Monday's action at the time of recording this, you're going to notice something here. And again, this account does not represent all my positions with options or stocks. It is one trading account that's traded aggressively. So you'll see some puts on SMCI up here. You'll see some SOX S, NVIDIA. The one thing you're going to notice about this account and why I'm showing this, all you have are these little singles over and over and over again. Wash, rinse, repeat. And why I'm showing this is because it's very different than what you've seen where you're having these huge hits. Those huge hits, that's one type of market environment. This is just we're pulling money out left and right? We're seeing a pattern, we're taking advantage of the pattern, we're scaling out of the pattern, we're optimizing our trading strategy, and we're attacking. And the win rate on that day was 66.7%, which is actually pretty good. And then you kind of go through their total trades, and then that just shows you the gross P&L and the volume, I guess. But the important thing about it is all you're doing all day long, if you look at the P&L, all you're doing is constantly grinding higher. You're constantly, you're going to have setbacks during the day, of course. but you're just going to constantly be pulling money out of the market. This is very different than what you just went through, where you had these huge hits like Dell, where you were able to have those really big moves, right? And actually pull a lot of money out of the market, like this Dell call that we did, or pull money out with the Dell stock. You're not going to see that as much. Now, tonight we have Crowd. A lot of people were out of position for Crowd, and we're going to talk about this. But it's important to understand what kind of market environment you're in, because when you understand that, it dictates the kind of trading that you're doing. For example, right now, between Monday and even today, you'll notice that it was more of that swing trading, pulling money out, interim swing trading, I should say. Maybe you're going to hold overnight, maybe you're not. But you're not seeing that runaway market, and it's changed. And we're going to talk about why it's changed a little bit. But I think that this is a really important distinction to note, that it's always not just hitting that one big winner. Sometimes you're just going to have to grind out your days, and that's what we did here. So I hope that helps. You want to learn those differentiations. I'm seriously considering doing just a live like Q&A where we just talk about this and about options and how to note things. I think it might be helpful. Drop it in the comments if you think that's a good idea. Now, I hope you find that helpful. And before we get into the 22% on Crowd and what's going on there, I do want to just take a second and just go through a couple different names. I have this up because as I'm recording this, I am trading, and I just want to keep an eye on it. But you can see very clearly as we're about to go through, spoiler alert, Crowd crushed. And the call's going exceptionally well right now. So very little to say there about Crowd and what it's doing. But let's get into this, and we can obviously talk about how this is hitting highs, and we're going to do that. But I do want to talk about some things that I think are really poignant. For example, if we take a look at the SOX and we can just see the reversal right here, you're still going to want to make sure that you get over that level. Are we getting through, or are we going to stay in that tough penny environment? And quite frankly, the answer is we just don't know. We don't have a clue yet. And that's certainly something that we're going to want to figure out. We just really don't know if that's going to continue to push, if it's going to give us the environment that we want, or is this going to be a precursor? For example, if Crowd was not tonight, if you take a look at this Microsoft right here, I'm going to clean it all off, that would have just been an outright short. I mean, there would have been no question about the fact that you would be shorting it right there, right? There really wouldn't be any question for you sitting right at this level. So this is something we're going to have to watch tomorrow. Now, before we get into Crowd and what's going on there, you have to take a look at some of these others like PANW. They all sold down and now they're trading up $10. So the question is this going to be enough to keep us afloat? I'm just going to tell you, I think that some of these names are going to lift, and I don't know for how long. I don't know if they're going to continue to lift or if they're just going to roll right back over again. I really don't have a clue. And here's why. Because if you take a look at the NQ before we get into Crowd and what's going on this evening, I think there's a couple of really important distinctions. And here, let me show you what I mean by this. So if we take a look at the end of the day, right, you can see 355 and you can see everybody coming in. This is when institutions buy, right? So they're trying to get ahead of something. Apparently, people were saying all day Crowd leaked. And this is why I always tell people in the community, like, Crowd leaked, did it really leak? Or are you listening to people like Freddie Fingers on, Twitter or YouTube that's telling you it leaked? Because he's got a friend that, puts the water coolers in there or something. Like, you got to be really careful on where you get your information from. It's why I always tell you to call your feed. But if we go and take a look at the NQ during the day and how this is trading, there are a couple things that I use, and they have kept me out of harm's way. And I've used them for years, and they keep me out of harm's way. So some people will recognize this, and we have not flipped like this for some time. So what you're seeing is you're seeing the clouds start to turn yellow. Now, this is a private cloud that I created. It's not really too complex. I'm going to get rid of this, and that's a 20 EMA. But what I want to do is I want to show you a couple things with this. So see how I'm flipping here? And this falls right in line with exactly what I was saying yesterday. And here, let me show you what I mean by this. Because you're going to look at this and what I'm about to say and say, well, you just said yesterday that you're in those internet days. You're not as high as those internet days. You're nowhere near that, right? And the valuations strongly show that. What we're looking at here and where I'm going with this is very simple. If you take a look at these corrections that you've had, you can go back to 24 and see them, that when this turns yellow, you just stay out of the way. Yellow is caution. It's not rocket science. Green means go. Yellow means caution. I'm not the brightest bulb, so I color code everything. Now, when you see this and you see how it's color coded, you can see that you're flashing a yellow light. That to me means very clearly, I'm going to save everybody a lot of time, caution, tough penny environment. Take what I can get until this gets in a better environment. If I follow my logic with this on it, and I use this for an hourly, then I would not be trying to go long for a very long period of time with most names when it's like this. And when it's green, it's on. So if I go and take a look, well, from Thursday to February 29th to today, Tuesday at 8 a.m., yeah, yesterday it broke this cloud, and what did we get? A tough penny environment. Then the cloud turns yellow. It's not rocket science, guys. This is what I mean when I say follow a process, right? You'll note that all this time in February for that week, it was very easy to make money. And then you just go look at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and how it got harder. So this is one way that I would determine a tough penny environment. If I wanted to overlay this a little bit differently, I might flip to a 4-hour. I don't really use this on a daily. And it would tell me, am I in a tough penny environment or not? For example, like here, I'm not really in a tough penny environment, am I? Right? Not yet, because it didn't flip. But by the time the 4-hour forms, you might be in a tough penny environment. Therefore, I use this on an hourly. I hope you find this helpful. But this is one way that I would use this. The other way that I would just tell you guys to look at this and say, okay, well, I don't have your special super secret cloud. So how am I supposed to do this? Because this is not going to help me. So I would just very simply say that you could look at something like the Qs, and you're going to want to pay attention to this. I'm going to clean all this off for a second. And we're just going to go to, let's go to this bear chart. And that's going to change everything. And I apologize. I will clean this off eventually. I've just been super, super busy with trading and everything else. But since we're switching to the black, I do want to get rid of it. Okay, so how could you do this? A couple things. Number one, you can look at a 3, a 5, and an 8 day. Okay, so this is a 3, a 5, and an 8 on the Qs. And what you want to do is you want to look at alignment. And anybody can do this. Anybody. You don't need a super secret anything. Okay, so here's the 24th. What you're doing is you're using the 8, the 5, and the 3. As long as the 8, the 5, and the 3 are lined up, the 8, the 5, and the 3. So this is a 3-day moving average on a daily chart. It's a daily 3-day moving average, a daily 5-day moving average, and a daily 8-day moving average. And I put them on a 15-minute chart, but they're daily. When they flip, okay, you're in a what? Tough penny environment. When they go back over, you're in a trending environment. When they break here, you know that you could be heading into what? A tough penny environment. When did they break? Monday. Right? You see where we're going with this? See, if you start to follow this kind of stuff, life gets a little easy because it's not you telling the market what it's going to do. You're just looking at the market and going, oh, it's one of these. I need to deploy these processes in this environment. Get it? It's the same thing when we look at crowd, right? Please go back and listen to that statement. It's really important and it can save you a lot of heartache. It can actually save you years of your trading. So you don't want to tell the market what it wants to do. You want to determine what kind of environment you're in. Are you in a tough penny environment? Are you in a trending environment? We just were talking about this 10 minutes ago, maybe not even 5 minutes ago, and how this was heading higher, and you could see that this was heading higher. So we have talked about processes for some time. I'm going to give you another process that we have used over and over, and I've gone through ad nauseum for free in here. One of the key things that we always use is a 5-minute orb, right after hours. If it breaks the 5-minute orb, it's on, and then you just use that lower right there. So this is one way to use that process. The other way is to just do it off of 1 minute and do it here. You could have done the 1-minute orb, and then when it flips there, you're using that low right there. This would have gotten you 23 points as of now. Okay. So when you start to see this stuff, it's really important that you understand it. And it's really important that not only do you understand it, but that you take advantage of it. Because when you have these opportunities and you're in, quote, a tough penny environment, you don't know, am I going to close here or am I going to come back down here? You don't know, right? So these are tools that you can use. The other tool didn't work for anything tonight because it never got there. But watch this. If you put the anchored VWAP off the move, and you got there, then you could utilize the anchored VWAP from the move. Never got there, just kept ripping. The best ones usually don't. But let's get into what's going on here. Crowd absolutely crushed. Okay, 15% beat revenue, and they guided substantially higher. Not a little bit, a lot. At the time of recording this, I waited a little bit to record this, and the conference call is actually going on right now, and they're doing exceptionally well on the conference call. I actually have it in the background at the time of recording this. So it's going exceptionally well. Disclosure, I am long a plethora of this. Let's leave it at that. But I do expect this to give us some real big movements tomorrow. I expect this to have follow through. You had some other earnings coming out. And there are some things that we should probably go over in regards to that are important. So, for example, you're seeing some weakness here in Nordstrom's. Now, Nordstrom's usually has these bad quarters, and then somehow miraculously it bounces. You probably want to look at the ownership stake there. You might be able to figure out what's going on, but I can do that in a whole other video. Most important to leave you with is that if you're looking at the SPY, the number one thing that you're going to want to look at tomorrow, number one thing you're going to want to look at for the SPY tomorrow is you have 3 pieces of data. Now, tomorrow, these 3 pieces of data are absolutely huge, and we're going to go through them really quickly so that you're prepared for tomorrow. We're also going to cover this live tomorrow at 8:15. We will most likely be live by 8:15. Usually it starts at 8:30, but tomorrow for this number, I think we'll be live, but a little earlier. So just look for the pre-market live to start a little earlier tomorrow. But I laugh because that, usually I'm running a couple of minutes late. But 8:15, ADP employment data, you're looking for 107. Now, if this comes in lower or higher, it will move the market. The more violent this is, the more problems you're going to have. The issue that people forget about with this ADP, and you're going to know this tomorrow, the issue is ADP only does ADP data, where BLS does BLS data. Bureau of Labor Statistics does the country. ADP only does their clients. Their average client has 30 people. That's why people think that this is great to look at, but it doesn't give you the full purview of what's going on. Therefore, what winds up happening is people extrapolate this and expect a correlation with BLS. BLS is going to be on Friday. Sometimes if this causes a massive sell on the market, which it has in the past, you can actually get ahead of it and what happens on Friday. Something for us to watch very clearly tomorrow. 10 a.m., Powell will speak. He will say things are going great or things are going bad. Who knows? You never know. Life's like a box of chocolates with this guy. You just don't know what you're going to get. But this can move the market. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because all within an hour and 45 minutes, you have 3 events. And then you have Jolt's job openings, which has moved the market. Any one of these 3 have moved the market before by themselves. You have all 3 in the span of a little over 90 minutes, don't you? So something to think about tomorrow. Just watch this 9 million. You don't want to come in too high on that. You certainly don't want to come in too high here because if it's heated, then they're just going to kick the can down the road for cuts, which is not the worst thing. But right now, in regards to the market and how people are perceiving it, they are viewing it as the worst thing. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. That is it.